Hello, I'm Nicole Hartley Bradford, and this is the Radical Honesty Project. Broadcasting today, Tuesday, July 23rd at 11 a.m. Pacific Time from Davis Bay, British Columbia, Canada. I feel glad because I have just published the first iteration of the Pirate Games website. Continue to be lit up by this game world that wants to be created through me, or that my archetypal lineage is giving me to create. And I credit the Radical Honesty Project for empowering this game world to exist, empowering me to originate it, and to, because it took being radically honest with teammates. It took me having more space in me to ask for and receive the radical honesty of others. And I can't recommend these practices enough. I mean, in a way, this is one of the pirate games, is to be radically honest. And each of the pirate games so far comes from the honest necessity of the pirates who have been part of originating the game. I've discovered that pirate games is another word for experiments that empower radical responsibility. This has been a cool discovery. I want to get on with reading the book, Radical Honesty, by certainly a pirate, Brad Blanton. And on page 9, we begin the part of the introduction called Lying. This book unfolds developmentally, beginning with an accounting of how a mind grows from nothing to what it is by the time it reaches adolescence. The central message of this book is that we human beings, in the course of growing up, get lost in our minds. And if we don't find our way out, our minds eventually kill us. I've also been working today on a website called Learning to Die. This is a website that was originated by Clinton Callahan, another noteworthy pirate, and Ingrid Schmidhuisen, Martina Ricarda, myself. It features stories from Millicent. I honestly don't know how to say some of these names because I don't hear them said often. I see them written often. And this thing about how our minds, human beings get lost in our minds. And if we don't find our way out, our minds eventually kill us. There is an extraordinary article written by Millicent, featured on the Learn to Die website, about really, I mean, how it landed for me. This story is here's this human being, Millicent, who has since adolescence kind of had felt such intense pain at different times that she wanted to die, and felt other intense things, and had thoughts where it's like, I want to die. It is, even she said she had the necessity to die. And how she discovered that there were other ways to die than killing your physical body. And the rest of the article is, she tells of an experiment that she did of an initiation of a death she designed and went through in order that the parts of her would die that she wanted to die, and that she would become something new. And yeah, I love radical honesty as an ongoing process of letting die what is killing us so that we can be with what is. Brad continues to write, we all have minds and we come by them naturally. Yeah, naturally, inevitably, I would say, because my sense is that the spirit of nature intends something different than the minds that human beings are coming by. And I might be wrong about this. In learning how to survive from birth to adulthood, we start out using our senses as a primary mode of orientation in the world, and we end up as minded beings using principles of orientation. Wow. Yeah. This going from using our senses really speaks to me from this this transition that is made in human beings as we age, from being embodied in with our senses, including our feelings, anger, sadness, fear, joy, moving up into our heads and orienting from mental principles, from and probably from principles generally, including, I would say, bright and dark principles, and more dark principles become at work through us as we come from our heads. We abstract from our senses and build our minds. Yeah, we build a mental reality, a verbal reality, rather than being in experiential reality. After a while, we get so involved in mind development that we lose touch with our senses and get lost in our minds. Our minds are formed of interpretations about reality based on replicated experiences. After a baby experienced being nursed repeatedly, it starts anticipating being nursed again based on hunger and its little memory, and it cries for more milk. When more milk comes quickly, a tiny little concept involving time has been born. The baby has an interpretation. If I cry, I'll get milk. That interpretation has a memory in it and an expectation for the future. Wow. As we grow, we learn to interpret our experience in order to survive. We eventually become capable of caring for ourselves, but our survival techniques can, and often do, eventually kill us. Yeah, this brings to mind, yeah, a group of possibilitators who are researching in this territory of something called building inner structure. And it has a lot to do with learning how to take care of oneself and take care of things in life, building what it takes to do this in new ways. And it's a very experienced learning based. I'm watching these people like create experiences for themselves where they learn to do things that they didn't know how to do before, and build this inner structure where, yes, even though they have been capable of caring for themselves, but the survival techniques that they also have been using are killing their joy, their the intimacy in their relational spaces, their uh, kind of opinions of themselves, or their stories of themselves, mm, as brilliant beings. Mm, and wow, yeah, I love that they're starting with honesty about what structure they are missing, and then creating possibilities and doing the work to build these inner structures so that this isn't how it continues to go for them. What kills us is intense attachment to our interpretations, intense attachment to our interpretations, and failure to distinguish these interpretations from sensate reality. Yeah, so we make these interpretations of ourselves and we cannot distinguish them from reality. I'm reminded of, yeah, this one of the interpretations that I had been living with was to interpret what people said and did and didn't say and didn't do as they're not on my team. They don't care about me. They don't want me here. And when sensate reality showed me that they wanted me there, they were on my team, they cared about me. He writes, this process of learning to categorize experiences and then forgetting the distinction between categories and experience itself is what I call learning how to lie. Yeah. And this takes me back to these repeated experiences that he's talking about, um, replicated experiences, and how I, experience by experience, made meaning, decided that certain actions and lack of actions, certain words and lack of certain words, uh, meant that my mother was not on my team, that my teachers were not on my team, that my brothers were not on my team, that friends were not on my team and didn't care about me and didn't want me there. And, there, didn't want me there, kind of started to be this bigger and bigger location. And certainly in their presence or somewhere near their presence. And then, this for me, going back to Millicent's article, is how by the age of 14, I started to want to kill myself. I had the experience for the first time of wanting to kill myself. So obvious to me was this interpretation, this that I made, that I mistook for reality, that in particular my mother didn't want me to be alive, didn't want me there in her life on planet Earth. And this is something that plagued me really, for decades. Learning how to pretend, interpret, evaluate, and imagine is a natural process for every human being. It's fun. Most of the learning that occurs in early childhood, preschool, and elementary school is an elaboration of these abilities. In every culture of the world, as infants grow toward adulthood, this learning of pretense is going on. I had an interesting moment in the wake of the bursting forth of pirate games as a game world for me to originate, I thought, wow, I remember saying many times, and certainly thinking many more times in my life, that I don't like playing games. And what I meant was I didn't like playing board games or card games or kind of mind games or mm, like play acting games. And I realized that this was not accurate. So I've been telling a lie. Well, I loved playing certain games and I hated playing other games. And the games that I hated and the games that I loved to play, I realized that, well, this is how I discern pirate games, or the games I love to play and want to play, from, maybe there's a word to find for these games. I mean, so far I have modern culture games, patriarchal, capitalist, commercially based games of competition and comparison and right wrong making and good bad making and win lose making. Aha, yes, win lose games and even win win games. I don't like win win games because there's compromise and everyone loses a little bit. And there's the possibility of winning happening games. And these are the kind of games that pirate games makers make and peddle in winning happening ways. I'm loving how the Radical Honesty Project is beginning to be a space where I unfold more and more about pirate games. I love it. Okay, the learning of pretense. The long process of learning how to lie culminates in adolescence. Adolescents get lost in their imaginings about who they are. Erik Erikson says that the question being asked during adolescence is, who am I? And the answer eventually reached is either fragmentary, role confusion, or unified, an ego identity. Wow. Okay, wow. You get role confusion or ego identity, and probably a mixture. I'm thinking I had a mixture. And this became dangerous when I experientially entered the territory of motherhood, because then I had an ego identity of mother and role confusion in regards to what did my role, the role I played mothering my son and eventually all four of my children, how did that go with uh, my other roles? My role as, in 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 later adolescence, this who am I ego identity I had was, I don't know who I am. I'm still learning who I am. I am so many different things at different times. And how did then I became a mother, and this was torture, uh, this experience of having role confusion and ego identity, uh, and yet somehow I guess I had enough unified ego identity to offset the fragmentary role confusion, especially as I held to this I am so much and I don't know what to call it and I don't know what it adds up to and I don't know how to pigeonhole myself in a job description or in one role, mm, in order to fit into modern culture. And now I have this identity, this unified identity of pirate queen, creator of pirate games, to live in. And the fragmentation is so much less. It's almost like all the fragments are covered in this unifying identity. In order to mature beyond the role playing or pretending stage, the question, who am I? Wait, I'm having other thoughts as I read. One is this job of this identity, this job, this role of pirate queen, creator of pirate games. It's something cool about it that might not jive if you're thinking with standard human intelligence thoughtware, rather than Arkan thoughtware, is that this identity, this role, this job of pirate queen, creator of pirate games, is present in all of my roles, in all of the work I do, even when I am not obviously playing pirate games or making pirate games or designing them or building them or peddling them. I am this pirate queen, creator of pirate games, including when I'm going through the boxes from my mother's storage room in preparation for a garage sale on Saturday, even when I am in a call with Martina and Ingrid about next steps and how it's going in the Learn to Die website, even while I am preparing to go to bed at night. This identity is alive and not fragmented. I don't have confusion about my roles, because each of my roles, each of the necessities, each of the relational spaces and the creations that I'm part of, I can bring the pirate queen to those roles. In order to mature beyond the role playing or pretending stage, the question, who am I, must get answered in some unitary way. The numerous roles kids try on for size have to become integrated into a consistent identity that remains even when new roles are adopted. Yes, I did it finally at 54. And it's been what is it? Integrating into a consistent identity, especially since I shifted into the identity of experimenter. Yeah, more consciously, which really just took noticing that I am an experimenter, and I had been an experimenter my whole life. And now I could become a conscious experimenter by clearly choosing experiments that had a purpose, a beginning, a middle, and an end, and then sharing my findings with other experimenters. So this uniquely synthesized personality that kids can end up in for work eventually has to predominate over role requirements as demonstrated by role models or by ideal role performance. Wow. Role models. This is what I was lacking as an adolescent, as a young adult, as a middle-aged adult. Yeah, it was really, and a lot of it was this, my bullshit detector. I didn't know I had one, and I had one, and I was quite competent at using it. And I was pissed about the dishonesty. I was pissed when I could sense that there were things that were being withheld, things that were being pretended, things that were being spun, things that were just like these interpretations of reality as distinct from my senses of reality, also my interpretations of reality. Wow. Okay. There has to be a Jillness about the way Jill plays the role of daughter, lover, and waitress that is there at all the time she is talking to her mother, being with her lover, or waiting tables. This Jillness stands out regardless of whether mother, lover, or customers are in the environment, and regardless of how she has seen roles played on TV or in books. Yeah, yeah, my Nicoleness. I was really challenged to stay in touch with my Nicoleness when I was doing different roles, being a daughter, being a lover, being a mother, being a waitress, being a tree planter, being a manager of 141 residential tenancy suites, being a person who was shopping. And my Nicoleness, yeah, when I was with different people and I would say giving my center, giving my authority to their interpretations, their expectations, their needs, their attitudes, their what they wanted, how they described the world, and not knowing yet how to handle that, how to handle the malignment or the space between the Nicoleness and what I thought was being asked of me or wanted of me, required of me, demanded of me, thought of me. He continues to write, the duration of this developmental stage, the stage of pretending and trying on roles to establish or invent who you are, depends on the culture in which you live. The more technological the culture, the longer the stage endures. Bushmen have 1 year, from 11 to 12 years of age, to form their identities. By the age of 12, they have chosen a vocation, gotten married, started making babies, and assumed adult roles. In modern culture, our culture, he says, adolescence lasts from age 11 to about 30 or 35. And wow, I would add here that in modern culture, if your adolescence, I would argue that adolescence, I have seen 80-year-old adolescent humans. I have seen humans of all ages who I would say are in an adolescence. And maybe from the perspective of modern culture humans, they would see anyone who they would think of as still in adolescence as mentally ill. And yet there is a sanity that I see in myself and in other people older than 12, certainly, than 30, than 35, who are radically honest about not being full-fledged adults, about not being able to take radical responsibility for how they're handling their lives, in particular their relational spaces. He does go on to say that this extension of the time to choose vocational, sexual, and social identities in highly technological cultures, and technology, he's meaning the technologies that are not Gaian. I would say Bushmen, they they have technologies that are they have a technological culture. They use technologies in their culture, but their cultures are not what's called high tech, they're called low tech. And I have no problem with using those terms because the lower the technologies, the closer they are to Gaian technologies, the more they come from reality instead of this verbal ideology of I mean, it's so evident when it comes to things like machines empowered by fossil fuels are the solution to survival. This, it's like humanity as a whole has created a culture where extracting fossil fuels and burning fossil fuels in order to survive is actually threatening the survival of the species. Okay, so yeah, I would describe things a little bit differently than how Brad is describing them based on this distinction between adult, modern culture, adulting, and a culture of radical responsibility, adulting. He writes, right now, the fastest growing death rate in our society is for people between the ages of 15 and 24. Suicides, drug overdoses, accidents, and murder head the list of causes. We get a longer time to invent who we are, but the job takes a greater toll. Even when people survive the years of adolescence, the great majority never get over the pretense of adolescence. This is what I'm talking about. Enormous suffering is caused by being lost in such pretense. Frequently, helping professionals recommend more pretending and more conventional pretending because they don't understand that the job of psychotherapy is to reground people in the world of experience. Yes, very often helping professionals try to reground people in the world of an adolescent culture. Pretend that you don't feel what you feel. Pretend that you like doing your job, that you're okay with how it goes in your home, in your family, in your... The stress that kills or cripples most of the population comes from people being too hard on themselves when they don't live up to their own imaginings about how other people think they should behave. Yeah. Yeah, this is definitely, I see myself in this. I see how hard I have been on myself when I didn't live up to what I imagined other people thought I should be doing, be thinking, be feeling. So not just behaving. Because there were a lot of times when my behaviors, my actual behaviors, were largely, because this was happening the other direction too. I was in relational spaces and families and workspaces with other people who were also being hard on themselves when they weren't living up to their imaginings about how I thought they should behave. And then this led to fighting. And this led to being hard on each other about how we thought the other people thought we should be behaving. We don't know who we are, and we try to guess who we ought to be in order to do the right thing and be happy. We get lost in the process and beat the hell out of ourselves before we even know we're hurt. It does no good whatsoever simply to change what we imagine others expect of us. We need to recover the ability to pay attention to something other than the whirlpool of questions and doubts about what is required or expected for acceptance. This calls to mind what I'm seeing in some people who are starting to feel their feelings rather than numbing out, starting to be honest about what they're feeling and make room for those feelings to get bigger and to really be there. And then end up feeling a lot of fear. And there's a way that, like, I feel scared, and then they go to say because, and they say a reason that that sets off my bullshit detector, in that I have this sense that the reason they give and the information that their fear is actually bringing them are different. And, you know, like, for example, I might hear someone say, I feel scared because I don't know how this goes. And my sense is that actually they feel scared because they're scared it might go a certain way. And rather than saying, I feel scared because I think you're judging me, or I feel scared because I don't know what to do while I am thinking you're going to judge me or like me or not like me, depending on what I do. And yeah, I'm noticing that I often, when I see that, I get scared because I think I know better than them what's going on in themselves. And I feel scared to say, I think this is happening. Is it? Or, and I feel scared that they would feel so scared about what was happening in them that they would lie, that they would say, no, that's not happening. And yeah, wow, this gives me insight about why radical honesty means so much to me, is because it's so scary when I'm wanting to be in reality and I'm being with someone and their ability to be in reality and mine are kind of are like hitting each other somehow. It's like snagging on each other's corners where there's not so much, where there's withholding happening or dishonesty happening, and then they catch on each other, and then there are more feelings happening. Yeah. It does no good whatsoever to simply change what we imagine others expect of us. We need to recover the ability to pay attention to something other than the whirlpool. Okay. We have lost this ability to pay attention to, live outside the set of assumptions a mind is. And the only method of orientation left is given by the roles we've been trying on for size. Yeah, I see this in people who are new to using and studying possibility management. They kind of take on a new role as a possibility manager, and then they're trying to be a good possibility manager, do the right thing as a possibility manager, or feel properly, or yeah, want the right things. Uh, Thus, we run around in the world while running around in our minds, trying to live up to standards we imagine others are requiring of us, while we starve for the nourishment that comes from commonplace experience. Oh, I get that another way of saying this is we run around in our minds trying to imagine our way or lie our way or starve our way to having the commonplace experiences we think are going to happen if we keep lying, if we keep starving ourselves, if we keep beating ourselves up, if we keep trying to read other people's minds, and if we keep believing our stories about other people and ourselves. end up trying to eat the menu instead of the meal. Menus are nutritionally without value and taste like shit no matter what pretty pictures decorate their surface. Speaking of menus, we also think we need to choose off the menu what we do eat. And this reminds me of a beautiful kind of, I don't know, koan, like a Zen koan I heard, or not really a Zen koan, but you decide what to call it. I heard this, that the one menu item on every single menu everywhere in the world is to choose from off the menu. It's invisible. It's not on the menu. It's not like, if you want, you can decide to have anything, whether it's on the menu or not. And I might choose to relate to a restaurant and a restaurant menu by saying, you know what, I don't want anything on this menu, so what I choose off this menu is to go to a different restaurant. As well as I might choose, look at, they have this and this and this and this, but not in the compilation that I want. And then I can say, would it work? Will you ask the chef here if it would work to make a burger with this bun and this patty and these toppings with this side dish? Will you find that out if that can happen? And then I choose off the menu while choosing from what's on the menu. Okay. Adolescents miss the security of childhood and can't stand the uncertainty of being between childhood and adulthood. Out of anxiety and intolerance for ambiguity, they grasp onto roles or rigid standards to claim an identity so they can escape the interminable struggle over how to fit in. They become Christians, or Hare Krishnas, or gang members, or hippies, or marry a childhood sweetheart just to have a place to stand. They adopt the standards and principles of these groups to live by. Standards or principles to live by are all equal in this way. They are abstractions of the mind, summations based on past experience and not experience itself. So he's talking about principles as abstractions of the mind, like values and like things you make important, where yeah, there's another way of using the word principle. Adolescents of all ages become more passionately attached to standards the more insecure they feel. Wow, this reminds me of a complaint that I heard from my mother, that I was so angry about things. And it was that I was passionately attached to certain standards that came from these identities that I grasped. I grasped as a tree planter. I really grasped this, passion. I became really passionate about tree planting as a solution to ecosystem loss and the loss of diversity of ecosystems. And I remember my mom saying, "You think that the answer to everything is tree planting," and it, it, it wasn't accurate. I didn't think the answer to everything is tree planting, but I thought tree planting was an answer to one of the things that was a problem. Strong attachment to principle only increases our rigidity, which further increases our feelings of insecurity. Yeah, and yet my rigidity didn't come from where my mother was seeing it coming from. It came from something else. It came from this belief that she didn't understand me, that she wasn't on my team, that she didn't care to understand me. And then this rigidity is what I hit. I ran into it. because I would just get so fired up that she would say and do the things she would say and do, rather than holding space for me to unfold what was there. Such behavior doesn't guide us through our changing experiences. Yeah. The world of experience is like a river. You are better off with a boat than with a post to hold on while the water beats you to death. To grow beyond adolescence, people have to let go of, rather than tighten their grip on, the principles and standards with which they define themselves. And this was my saving grace, really. I mean, I could let go of being a mother, being a good mother. I could let go of being a good mother to become something else. To I could let go of being a good mother and thereby let go of the reasons I had to kill myself, which, ironically was one of the ways that I continued being a mother, was because this wouldn't be good mothering. To kill myself, I would not be being a good mother. And yet then later I needed to let go of kind of all of my pretense about what a good mother looked like, not so that I could kill myself, but so that I could die into a new identity, which was quite an adventure. This is usually very scary, like falling backwards into the unknown. Oh, yeah. What results is experience in the here and now, eventually. The reemergence of this struggle, the struggle for identity that was put away by grasping onto an identity out of an intolerance of ambiguity, is the most valuable function of psychotherapy for people who are frozen in role definitions. These people are reborn from their mental jail into the here and now. And yet, so many lies can prevail. Yeah. I mean, if their here and now is modern culture, with all the have to. Uh, yeah. And then the people who end up on the other side of that, who are become, you know, uh, like refugees of modern culture on the edges, are often, seen as crazy, insane. They often resort to other escapes, other forms of escape, usually the forms that make them in their mind believe that they are having an ecstatic experience in reality. And thus we get those pictures where it's like, um, what I think I'm doing, what my mom thinks I'm doing, what I am doing looks like to me, what it looks like to my mother, what it looks like to different people, and what it actually looks like. These are some of my most appreciated memes. I haven't been seeing a lot of them. Such people learn to treat principles not as rules engraved in stone, but as less important rules of thumb to be validated or invalidated by new experience. Rules of thumb, guidelines, can be revised or rejected or created anew if the people who hold them make allowances to include new experience. Alan Watts's book, The Wisdom of Insecurity, is an elaboration of this point. The wisdom of insecurity, as are fear clubs. Fear clubs are amazing places to, to like stop living by rules and start living by something where there's new space, where revisions and rejections and creations can happen in order to include new experience and to create new experiences in reality, where because of what was going on in here, I couldn't do that before. But now I'm daring to do this. I'm daring to feel the fear and use my fear differently. Instead of using my fear to stop myself from going there, I use my fear to go there and to create as I go and to relate as I go and to be in reality, even though it's scary. People who are intensely attached to moral principles notice only the experiences that justify the rightness of the principles and simply don't notice anything else or make wrong about anything else. Fritz Perls, one of my teachers, Brad writes, recommended that people lose their minds and come to their senses. This is what I've been doing, losing my mind, coming to my senses, disidentifying with my thoughts and my ideas and my beliefs and my opinions and my stories and my judgments and my certainties, and coming into my physical body, my emotional body, my energetic body, so that these parts of me can inform me too. And yeah, not believing my mind, not thinking I am my thoughts, not thinking I am this set of structures, and that these feelings I have are being used to hold that in place rather than the feelings being used to let go and let, yeah, and to reconfigure my mental body so that it's not dominant, so that I'm not going in it and getting lost, so I'm not believing its stories about reality inside and in others, in other places, and that I have ways to check it out. Like I was saying, it's like, I feel scared that what you feel scared about might be this, and that you're saying it's something it's not. Will you check this out? Lose their minds, come to their senses. I adopt this recommendation. I highly recommend that you lose your mind and come to your senses. Unless people who have grown minds learn to lose their minds and come to their senses again, pay attention to gravity, their own bodies, the world of real objects and other beings out there, they remain locked in their own tightly held notion of how things are and never notice any new experiences. Yogis, Buddhist monks, golf pros, a few psychotherapy clinics, some musicians, and an odd assortment of others regain their ability to pay attention in spite of the minds they have developed. These people somehow progress beyond being trapped in and dominated by the mind stream to the exclusion of everything else. A mind is a terrible thing, wasted. This book delineates the problems that result from not escaping your constantly interpreting, lying mind, of not growing beyond the developmental stage of learning how to lie. It gives examples of how withholding the truth from other people kills or gravely dampens the life of the withholder. Not to mention the consequences it has on the other, in that the more I lie, the less room you have to be honest. And then the more honest I am, the more room other people have to be more honest. And what might come first are other lies before they get to the honesty. I remember saying in a situation once, like, I want you to be honest about I want you to be honest. I want you to choose honestly uh, about our relational space and about a wider relational space. And the person had enough room to be honest that they didn't want to be there, they didn't want to continue relating with me, and they didn't have, somehow there wasn't the space for then me to be honest about my fears about them leaving. And then there wasn't space for them to be honest about their fears about leaving, like what the consequences it would create. So it became this either or. Either you're honest and you do that, or you're honest and you want to do this. But there wasn't a like, with the honesty unfolding, there wasn't a like, yeah, this way, then this way, then this way, then this way, then this way. And we didn't get to find ourselves in a reality where we were handling reality from this freer, yeah, this new construction of what we decided from what we wanted, rather than kind of like, oh, I'll do this because I should, and I'll do that because I should, and I'll do this because I'm not doing what I should because I'm deciding to be honest. Psychotherapy is one way of learning how to finish growing up. Finish? Well, I would say how to continue growing up when you stop doing it. How to get creativity from the intermediate developmental stage of adolescent lying and fantasizing. How to get to creativity from the intermediate developmental stage of adolescent lying and fantasizing. So to go from adolescent lying and fantasizing, which I would say in modern culture includes such things as people who say, um, the average temperature for this week for the last 50 years has been, between 30 degrees and 34 degrees. Therefore, anyone else who is giving me any evidence that there's some kind of instability going on in the global climate uh, patterns is fear mongering. And yeah, rather than being able to be like, huh, how many forest fires are burning now, and how many were there in the 70s, and what kind of uh, area were there of forest fires? Because one of the things about forest fires is the bigger they get, the less there are, because they swallow each other up and they become one instead of being seven. So this, yeah, being grounded in experience is still happening in modern culture adults. What I have developed is a treatment for the problem of being stuck in adolescence, a problem I believe is shared by more than 75% of the population of the modern technological world. More than 75%? Huh. Yeah, I've been wondering about this because from time to time I see someone who has found themselves a role in modern culture, who is pretty realistic, and yet they still hold to certain tenets of the culture. For example, uh, they don't seem to notice that that they could learn how to live with other people. They don't seem to notice that their problem of having a 4-bedroom house for one person, that there are more possibilities than they can see. And yeah, It's a way of not being able to be with reality in the present, not being able, in a way, it's this part about fantasizing. It's not necessarily that the fantasizing is the problem, it's the fantasizing. uh, there are fantasy worlds that are that we can build, that when we let them crash we end up in reality. And there are fantasy worlds that we can build that uh, when we get handling reality, they become reality. It can be a tricky job to discern one from the other. The essential treatment method is a clear intention agreed upon by the therapist and the client together to tell the truth to each other and to everyone else the client knows personally in order to find our way out of the maze. This holds the great promise of bringing us to a more adult way of living, grounded in experience, less superstitious, less moralistic. Ironically, to mature fully, we must rediscover what we knew when we were less sophisticated. Once we have recentered ourselves in our experience, which is the position we inhabited as children, we can finally use our minds as instruments for creation rather than as defense systems for our image of who we are. Our hour is over. I'm ending on the bottom page of 13, 3 lines from the bottom, still in the introduction to Brad Blanton's extraordinary book, Radical Honesty. Thank you for listening. Thank you for your interest and your commitment to learning to become more radically honest. I feel massive joy to have made this time for this reading, for recording it. And I am, and imagine I will be always interested in hearing from you about anything that this research space brings up for you.